Your shirt is stuck to your back before you've even sat down. The fan on your nightstand is just pushing hot air across your face, and your electric bill already went up $40 this month because you're too scared to run the AC any more than you have to. Amish farmers in Lancaster County have never had this problem, and they don't have electricity in the house at all. A tin basin, a wet bed sheet, 14 cents. Stay with me because I'm going to show you the exact document that proves it. The first time I drove out to a small farm outside Intercourse, Pennsylvania, I met a man named Amos Stoltzfus, 64 years old, a lifetime spent working the same land his father worked before him. It was 98 degrees that day, the kind of heat that sits on your chest before you even step outside. His house had no central air, no window unit, nothing plugged into a wall. He wasn't sweating. What he showed me on his back porch made no sense to me at first. A small propane-powered fan sat angled slightly downward on an overturned crate, blowing across a length of wet burlap draped over a wooden frame his son had built years earlier. Beside it, a galvanized tin basin held the extra water he used to keep the cloth soaked through the afternoon. That was the entire setup. No wiring, no filters, no thermostat. I asked him how long his family had been doing this. He didn't have a year for me, just as long as anyone remembers. I didn't understand why it worked until I started digging through pre-1900 rural household records afterward, looking for anything documenting this kind of practice. And when I found what I found, you'll understand why what I'm about to show you matters. Subscribe now, because the next part of this is the piece nobody's talking about. Modern advice tells you the fix for heat has one shape: run the air conditioner harder, or replace it with something bigger. According to the US Energy Information Administration, air conditioning equipment is used in 87% of American homes, and the average household spends $265 a year cooling their home, climbing as high as $525 annually in hot, humid regions like the Southeast. And when that system finally fails, a full replacement routinely runs between $5,000 and $12,500 installed, sometimes more depending on your region and unit size. Every year those numbers climb a little higher, and every year the industry's answer stays exactly the same. Here's what almost nobody explains to you at the point of sale. A fan on its own does not lower the temperature of a room. It only moves the air that's already there. That's not a marketing opinion. It's basic physics the industry has had zero reason to walk you through, because a $30 box fan doesn't need a service contract and a $9,000 unit does. But here's what Amish households never did. They never waited on a machine to solve a problem they could solve with material they already had on hand. They changed what the air was moving across, not just how hard it moved. And it's the reason a shaded porch with a wet length of linen hanging in the breeze can feel genuinely cooler than a modern apartment with a struggling window unit, because one of them is actually removing heat from the air and the other is just stirring it around. The method has a name now, even if Amos never used it: evaporative cooling. It works on one principle that hasn't changed since long before electricity existed. Water absorbs heat as it converts from liquid to vapor. When moving air passes across a wet surface, it gives up some of its heat to evaporate that moisture, and the air coming out the other side is measurably physically cooler than the air that went in. The U.S. Department of Energy's Building America Solution Center confirms this exact mechanism. Evaporative coolers work by drawing air across water-soaked pads, and this method works best in dry climates where the outdoor relative humidity during the cooling season stays low. That's the honest science behind what Amos was doing on his porch without ever putting a name to it. The one detail worth being honest about, the detail nobody selling you a new HVAC unit will ever bring up, is that a fan never actually lowers the temperature of the room itself. It only moves air. The cooling you feel is entirely localized to wherever that airstream reaches you directly. When I asked Amos why he angled the fan the way he did, low and slightly downward instead of straight across, he said it plainly without missing a beat: "You're not cooling the house, you're cooling yourself. That's all you ever needed to do." Here's why nobody ever explained this to you plainly. It's not a conspiracy, it's worse than that. It's economics, and economics doesn't need a room full of people making a plan. It just needs an industry that profits more when you stay confused, and stays profitable precisely because nobody ever has to say that part out loud. HVAC manufacturers profit every single time you believe the only real fix for heat is a bigger, newer, more expensive unit. Utility companies profit every hour that unit runs, all summer, every summer, for the entire life of the system, whether it's running efficiently or not. And the home insulation and retrofitting industry, frequently marketed to you as the real long-term fix, the thing your contractor tells you to do before you even think about a new system, is a multi-billion-dollar a year business in the United States that has absolutely no incentive to mention that a damp cloth and a fan you already own solves most of the discomfort for free, tonight, with zero installation appointment required. A conspiracy you could fight, you'd know exactly who to be angry at and where to direct it. A system you can't see is harder to fight because nobody ever sat in a boardroom and decided to keep this from you specifically. It just quietly became the way things are, repeated in every appliance ad, every HVAC sales call, every well-meaning home improvement show, until asking a simpler question stopped occurring to anyone at all. Nobody's hiding a folder marked "Don't tell them about the wet cloth." They just never had a single reason to bring it up, and neither did anyone whose paycheck depends on you staying uncomfortable enough to keep calling. Here's exactly what to do, and you likely already own everything you need to make this work tonight. Take any box fan or oscillating fan sitting in a closet or garage right now. Find a length of burlap, cotton toweling, or an old bedsheet you don't mind getting wet. Cut it to roughly the size of the fan's front grate. Soak it completely in cold water, then wring it once, just enough that it's thoroughly wet but not dripping down your floor or furniture. Drape it directly over the front of the fan, or hang it on a simple frame a few inches in front of the airflow so it doesn't get pulled into the blades. Turn the fan to medium speed, not high. A stronger blast dries the cloth out faster than it can meaningfully cool the air passing through it, which defeats the entire purpose. Total material cost under $3 if you're using cloth you already have around the house. Total setup time under 10 minutes. Start to finish, no tools required. One honest caveat worth repeating. This works best in dry air. In already humid climates, the extra moisture released into the room can make things feel clammy rather than cooler. So if you're somewhere sticky, keep a window cracked for airflow to let that moisture escape instead of building up. Re-wet the cloth every couple of hours to keep the effect going through the evening. By week 1, you'll notice you're reaching for the AC less often, especially in the early evening hours. By week 2, your energy bill starts to shift in a direction you can actually see. By week 4, you'll have a nightly routine that costs you nothing at all, just a bowl of water and 10 minutes. In the Lancaster Mennonite Historical Society's collection of household bulletins from the late 1800s, there's a short instructional pamphlet on summer household comfort. Practical advice distributed to rural families who had no access to ice delivery and no mechanical cooling of any kind. It describes almost word for word the same wet cloth and airflow method Amos showed me on his back porch. A damp cloth hung wherever the prevailing breeze, or later a hand-cranked fan would pass directly through it, re-wetted by hand throughout the day as it dried, without anyone needing to understand a single technical term for what was actually happening. There is no manufacturer's name anywhere in that pamphlet, no product to buy, no service plan to renew, no fine print about annual maintenance visits. Just a plainly written explanation passed down through households that had no other choice but to understand the physical world well enough to work with it instead of paying someone else to explain it to them every summer for the rest of their lives. That's the piece modern advice quietly dropped the moment there was money to be made convincing people otherwise, not because the knowledge stopped working, not because someone proved it was outdated or ineffective, but because it stopped being profitable for anyone to remind you it existed. A pamphlet like this doesn't generate a service call, it doesn't need a warranty, it doesn't need you to come back next year. And somewhere between that pamphlet and the appliance aisle of a modern hardware store, that's exactly the kind of knowledge that gets left behind. Not lost, just quietly unmentioned. Some of you are probably thinking this can't really compare to actual air conditioning, and you're right, it doesn't drop the temperature of an entire room the way a compressor-driven system does. But it dramatically increases comfort for a fraction of the cost, and it's meant as a supplement for the hottest hours of the day, not a wholesale replacement for AC in genuinely extreme heat, or in a home with someone medically vulnerable to high temperatures. There's also the question of climate. Maybe yours feels too humid for this to make any real difference. That's a fair concern, and an honest one. In high humidity, evaporative cooling genuinely loses effectiveness, since the surrounding air is already close to saturated and can't absorb much more moisture. In that case, keep a cross breeze moving through the room and use this method during the driest part of your day, usually early morning or late evening, rather than expecting it to carry you through a humid afternoon. Then there's the skepticism you might be carrying in from somewhere else entirely, a spouse, a contractor, someone who already told you box fans are useless in real heat. They're not entirely wrong about a bare, dry fan sitting on its own, but they're not accounting for the evaporative layer, which is the entire mechanism doing the actual work here, not the fan itself. And if none of that has fully convinced you, that's fine. Skepticism is a reasonable place to start. Here's the one thing I'd ask before dismissing it outright. One damp towel, one evening, hung in front of your fan. You'll feel the difference within 5 minutes, and it costs you absolutely nothing to find out for yourself. You didn't lose this knowledge on your own. It was taken from you gradually, one appliance ad at a time, one you really need a bigger unit sales pitch at a time, one generation at a time, until almost nobody remembered that a bucket of water and a strip of cloth used to be enough to get most families through a summer without ever touching a thermostat. There's a group of people out there, a lot of them our age, who are done being sold expensive solutions to problems that used to cost pennies to solve with things already sitting in the house. People who'd rather understand how something actually works than pay someone else to keep it a mystery. If that's you, you're already further along than most. If you've tried something like this before, or if you're skeptical it could actually work where you live, tell me your city and how humid it gets there. I read every single comment, and some of the best material for future videos has come straight from people telling me what actually happened when they tried it themselves. Next time, I'm going back into those same household bulletins to show you the root cellar cooling method families relied on before refrigerators existed at all. No electricity, no ice delivery, just dirt, depth, and airflow doing the work modern appliances now charge you monthly for. If you want that one when it's ready, subscribe now. This is the kind of knowledge that only survives if people keep passing it on.